Cool. So, go ahead. So first of all, some context about me and the presentation today. So my company, SmartLogic, we build custom web and mobile applications. Work with startup companies, existing businesses, just developing their products. The context of this presentation assumes that you've already done, your market research. You already have an idea for a product. You've tested the market, so on and so forth. You have a development team, in-house, offshore, contractor, whatever it is. You've got this big backlog of features to build. So what I'm going to talk about is the best way to build the features and just get them out to the market. What we found to be the best way is just have a minimal amount of process that will enable the developers to actually write code to develop the features and deliver them to the product owners who are responsible for creating these requirements, talking to the market, figuring out what all the stories are, and then accepting and rejecting the work that the developers do. And then another important part is the process should really set the expectations so that everybody's speaking on the same page, developers know what's expected of them, product owners know what's expected of them, so on and so forth. Next. So how we do it, again, this is just from our experience, what we find to work. We use a couple tools, Pivotal Tracker, GitHub, Campfire, and Skype, and we'll go into all these tools in a second. So first of all, Pivotal Tracker is a web-based tool that helps you manage user stories. So you can think of a user story as a requirement, a task, a ticket, some kind of feature that you want to add and build into your product. So the way it works is pretty simple. There's a couple buckets here. So we have current, that's this week, this iteration. Then we have the backlog in the middle. Those are features that are on the schedule to be developed. But aren't going to be developed in this iteration. So you might have 2 months of a backlog, you could have a week of a backlog, a year of a backlog, whatever it is. And then there's the icebox all the way on the right. Those are features that you might have in the roadmap, but aren't going to be developed in the near term. They're not on the schedule to be developed. So if you ever have like a good idea, but it's really just not worth implementing right now, you put it in the icebox. So the cool thing about Pivotal Tracker is the life cycle of a story. So I don't know if you can see it, but over here in the backlog, there's the start button. So that means the feature hasn't been started. Developers haven't started writing code to implement the feature. But let's say I'm a developer coming to work one day, and I pull up Pivotal Tracker, and I just want to start writing code. I'm going to pick off the top thing from the backlog, hit the start button, and then start writing code. And then it turns into this finish button over here. So I'm a developer, I'm writing code to implement this feature, writing unit tests, functional tests, whatever, making it work. Then I check it into the source code control repository. I think it's done. Then I'm going to hit the finish button, and then it's going to turn into this, and there's a deliver button. So then the lead developer or somebody on the development team will check to make sure that the feature looks good, develop to expectations, and then we'll deploy it to a staging server, where the product owner then goes and can hit the accept or reject button. So one thing that I'm really big on is just having the product owner, whoever that is, for us it's all somebody on the client's end, hitting the accept or reject button. So a developer, somebody writing code, should never accept or reject a story just because we want the product owner to actually tell us whether the feature was developed to their expectation. So there's all sorts of other things in Pivotal Tracker. There's estimates on every story. You see these bars, you can't really see them too well. You can estimate stories, and then it'll build out a velocity for you and estimate how long it'll take to develop your whole backlog. All sorts of other things, but I think we covered the basics. So then another tool we use is GitHub, which is a web-based tool for Git, which is a source code control repository. So the developers will spend a lot of time in GitHub. GitHub has all sorts of cool features. I don't think we need to get into it today. We could do a whole other talk on just the technical development process. But suffice it to say that GitHub is an excellent interface for just looking at code, seeing who's working on what. So when you have 2 or more developers, you need some kind of source code repository. And GitHub is just hands down the best tool for the job. Next. And then we use Campfire, which is a product from 37 Signals, and it's just real-time chat and collaboration tool. So there's a web interface, so you could have the product owners, developers, anybody just sign in and just be available in a chat room. So that way, if developers writing code has a question, they can just ask the product owner right away. If the product owner, let's say, one of the end users calls in, says there's a bug, we get it fixed right away, they can just drop it into Campfire, start talking to the developers, and resolve the issue right away with minimal emails and, out-of-band communication. Next. So the second part of everything of how we get features developed is through process. And again, I'm big on just having just enough process, just keeping it simple and not getting bogged down in meetings. So again, this is what we do and what we found to work. So we'll have an epic meeting, that's at the top here, and that spans over several iterations. So an epic, we consider an epic to be like a large feature set. So maybe you have an administrative panel, maybe you have a customer panel, maybe you have something for vendors. Those would all be epics. At the end of the day, they translate into dozens of user stories that we put into Tracker. So here are all the user stories, and again, we're keeping track of all these in Pivotal Tracker. So an epic meeting might cover like 2 months of work, a month of work, whatever it is. It takes a couple hours. Then on a weekly basis, we have an iteration meeting where we just review the stories from last week. We might reprioritize stories. Pivotal Tracker lets you just drag and drop something. So if at any time your market's telling you, actually, we want the vendor features ASAP as opposed to the billing features, you just drag and drop. Makes it really simple. And then on a daily basis, we have the stand-ups. So 5 stand-ups per iteration, and that's a 1 to 10 minute meeting where developers, product owners, whomever is talking just to figure out what we're doing today, what we did yesterday, eliminate any bottlenecks. So the whole point is that developers should just be able to churn out features with minimal overhead and minimal meetings and all that stuff. So takeaways. Number 1. No process is a terrible process. If you can't have consistent results from week to week, then nobody knows what's going on, nobody knows what you're working on, and then maybe your sales and marketing people or person or whatever it is not going to know what to advertise in the upcoming weeks. Doesn't know that this vendor functionality might not be available for 4 weeks, and it's just there are no expectations. Somebody's going to be disappointed because there are going to be all sorts of surprises. Surprises are, in my experience, pretty bad in business. Next. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I like to think our process is really simple and lightweight. There's not a lot going on, and it's consistent across all of our client projects. The tools we use, they're very simple. They're very good at the specific things they do. I know there's tools like Asana or other super heavy project management tools, but I think they suck. Next. So again, this is what works for us. We've iterated over our own process over the years. It's totally different than it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago. So do what works for you. What works for our 8-person team might not work for your 2-person team, isn't going to work for your 40-person team, so on and so forth. So just fail, fix rapidly. All right, next. The product owner should really be the one accepting features. It shouldn't be a developer, because then your expectations are going to be out of whack. What the developer who stereotypically sits in the basement drinking Mountain Dew, playing computer games, whatever, expects to be a good feature is not going to be what somebody with maybe some accessibility issues might expect is a good feature, or what your average Joe Schmo using the internet is going to expect to be a good feature. And lastly, communicate all the time. So we all know that waterfall development style, where you get this big functional spec and hide under a rock for 3 months developing a big product, doesn't work. Especially since we're talking about lean and agile and all that good stuff. Just get stuff out the door. But the only way you can do that is by communicating with the product owners, sales, marketing, developers, so on and so forth.